Tēnā tātou katoa me te matatata tēnei hui e te karakia. A ko te pau o te aroha paupaua kia mau. Ko te pau o te aroha tiritiri a kia au. Paupaua tiritiri a kia mau kia au. Ko te pau o te aroha ki waina nui i tēnei hui hui no tātou. Tūturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna.
Tēnā.
Taupi e hui e.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you very much, Jade. Okay, the next item is apologies. And we have apologies from Councillor Kevin Taylor, and Mari's here. So that's our only apology today. So I just need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Greenslade and Aroha French. I'll put the motion, all those in favour say aye, against, carried, ka pai. We've got a minor late item, which is a request for a public forum. So that is, because this item is late, there is a need to formally add it onto the agenda. Therefore, we're going to propose the following motion. So I put it up on the screen rather than me reading that all out. And this is to allow 10 minutes for Mr. Tilton and 10 minutes for Maya Wakaida to do public forum.
Sorry.
Very similar to our last. So I'm going to move that resolution. I'm just going to ask for a seconder. Mayor David, seconded the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Cool. And that'll be considered before item 5.1. The next item is there any conflicts of interest that aren't ordered? I don't think there are any. Looking at wow, so we're already on to item 4.1, which is confirmation of minutes for the meeting held on the 25th of July. Before I ask for any mover, are there any amendments to the minutes? Oh, I'm just going to ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved. Jade Wakaida, seconded. Mari Manipoto. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Apply. Next item is this public forum item, the new item 5.2. So some of you have got a page. So the two requests is Mr. John Tilton, lessee of the Motutere Bay Top 10 Holiday Park, and a representative from Ngāti Tangata ki White Toko Hapu, who we've met before, which is Maya Wakaida. So as I raised before, they have been allocated 10 minutes each, and so there won't be any debate or decisions in terms of those presentations, and they'll be done in accordance with our standing orders. But that's pretty much straightforward. So, John, and it's 35 minutes past 4 in New Zealand time. I'll let you start. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. To Mr. Mayor, other committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I won't be long, I'll be quite brief. I understand that there's been some concern regarding the last resolution of the committee to allow camping on the foreshore to the east of the boat ramp without a finite finishing date. I preempted this issue following the last committee meeting and informed staff that my 33-year lease should include a clause allowing the council at any point after 2038 to prohibit camping on the lakefront, subject to a new plan of management adopting that position. I felt this would alleviate the concerns of some of the committee members, that there would be no chance to end camping for another 33 years. I understand now that a rescission motion is now being proposed to ban camping from 2038. My suggested compromise that I think will be acceptable to all is as follows. I believe that camping should be able to be abolished at any time in the future after the council allocates funds to develop the day visitor area. This can be conditioned to be included in the new 33-year lease. That holds me to that decision. In the interim, the holiday park continues to operate on the lakefront as it does today. The domes be removed within 12 months from the date of the new lease. Permanent caravans, I issue notice to the permanent caravans on the lakefront to be removed, giving them a period of 4 years maximum or earlier with consensus. The expansion area to be developed to accommodate motorhomes, subject to the necessary approvals. And after the development of the expansion area is completed, all motorhomes be redirected from the lakefront to the new area. At the same time, the Western Lakefront Amenities Block and Camp Kitchen would be relocated to the new expansion area, allowing the western area of the reserve to be closed for camping and maintained by the lessee until it is formalised by council. The remaining eastern end of the lakefront of the section of the holiday park continues to operate as normal until council constructs the infrastructure for the day visitor area. At this time, all remaining lakefront assets would be removed by the lessee and all camping cease on the lakefront. I am hoping this will satisfy all concerned and allow a smooth transition from lakefront camping to the rear of the park. On what I consider a more serious issue, Mr. Chairperson, it has been brought to my attention that council has received a request for copies of all correspondence between myself and councillors and myself and council staff. Whilst I don't generally have concerns about the content of emails, they may contain commercially sensitive information that will disadvantage my business, and I request that I be consulted over what may be released. Moreover, I'm concerned this is happening now and what is behind it. After a company internet search, it shows the person seeking this information is Agina Rangi, acting as director of what appears to be a shell company called Koi Consulting. This company has no website, Facebook page or activities online. It would therefore be correct to assume that she has been appointed by a third party. Gina is a lawyer specialising in Maori governance and land and management and resource management. Let me just say that no one seeks this type of information to find my address to send me a Christmas card. I believe this is a deliberate attempt to find something, in inverted commas, to target my name and my family business. I believe someone is trying for a gotcha moment where I can be discredited in some way to possibly prevent council from issuing me with a 33-year lease as per its resolution. I've been an example of compromise throughout this process, and this request for copies of my email goes a long way towards me just walking away completely from this plan of management process and just seeing out my 14 years. If it is coming from a member of this committee, then I consider the application should be withdrawn immediately on the grounds of bad faith. I'm asking the chair to seek clarification if anyone on this committee is behind this request, and if so, what is the objective? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tilton. Obviously, we're not here to debate those matters, but I just would point out in terms of Goima, and you might have to help me with the full name for it, but basically the way the Local Government Act works in New Zealand is anybody, and I mean anybody, including yourself, can make an application for information. It's just like our New Zealand Official Information Act. In terms of anything that's commercially sensitive, in terms of emails, there is ability to redact those things, and as far as I'm aware, any personal addresses or any of those things aren't part of that. So all the council like myself, so we get them quite regularly. It's not in New Zealand, it's not something where we look at the reasons why. It's just your right to make those requests for information, and that's that. Unless, yeah, again, not for debate, I'm just giving you my views, but certainly in terms of any concerns about your privacy, as well as any concerns about commercial information, the Act does provide for those things to be protected, and that's a process that you can work through with our council staff here. But yeah, it's not for us to determine the reasons why people make the applications. Anybody can make them. So we are now going to move to Maya. So you have 10 minutes as well. Maybe just introduce yourself and the ones that haven't met you before.
Ai, tēnā koe. Tēnā tātou katoa he uri tēnei no Ngāti Tirangi Taki Waitutoko Hapu. My name is Maya Wikaira and I'm presenting on behalf of Ngāti Tirangi Taki Waitutoko Hapu. I want to acknowledge the Working Committee members here today and the presence of the Mayor for this week. I want to start by acknowledging that there's a lot of noise surrounding the issue to be decided by you today. So I want to be clear about what I understand the decision you need to take is today and what Ngāti Tirangi Taki Waitutoko Hapu is asking you to do. The Working Committee is being asked to choose between 3 options. Option 1, delay consultation and direct officers to undertake further work on the draft plan. Option 2, approve the draft plan for consultation as is. Or option 3, make amendments and approve the draft plan for consultation. The Hapu say that there is no reason to delay, and we ask you to choose option 3. Specifically, we ask you to make amendments to include a direction that there is to be no lakeshore camping upon the expiry of the existing lease in 2038, 14 years from now, and to approve the draft plan for consultation. Our request is reasonable and it is fair. Option 3 is not an outcome designed to exclusively benefit the Hapu. Option 3 will restore public access for the whole community to the lakeshore area of the recreational reserve, and only after the existing commercial lease comes to an end. You are required by law to manage the reserve for public recreational purposes. The existing commercial lease has privatised this public space. It benefits an individual's private commercial business and has largely non-resident, non-ratepayer camping base. It has effectively excluded community access by the people of this district, the residents and ratepayers, including Hapu members. The Hapu is not asking for an early surrender of the campground lease. The campground owner's legal entitlements are not affected by this request. The lease expires in 2038 and the Hapu is not asking for early termination, nor have we asked for a change of the terms of the existing lease. We agree that it is reasonable and appropriate to give the campground owner the certainty that the lease term provides. His legal entitlements under the lease are respected, and he has 14 years' notice of the need to remove lakeshore structures from the reserve. Option 3 is fair in every possible way. The campground owner has previously told you that the loss of lakeshore camping after 2038 will have a direct and significant financial loss to his business. That is factually and legally incorrect. He has no legal entitlement to continue camping on the lakeshore after 2038. So there is no loss of income because he cannot rely on monetary benefits for a hypothetical new lease today that simply does not exist. You can only take into account legal rights that exist today. He does not have a lease after 2038, and you therefore must set aside that issue. It is irrelevant to your decision today, and in fact, if it is taken into account, it is my view that the council is vulnerable to legal challenge for considering a legally irrelevant matter. The campground owner's position that the option agreed to at the last Working Committee hui to reconfigure the lakeshore area to enable separate day use and camping zones is a compromise is also false. He has previously indicated that his agreement to take up the option, and in fact, he speaks now as if he is entitled to that position, is premise on getting an extended lease term of 33 years. That means an extension of lakeshore camping for 19 years beyond his legal entitlement under the existing lease to 2057. The only persons compromising in that scenario are the community and the Hapu. They have compromised long enough. Further, the campground owner has been very open that he wants a longer term for lakeshore camping so that he can sell it for a better price. Extending his lease is not a compromised option for him. It is an attempt to achieve a commercially favourable option so that he can on-sell the lease to someone else. He is asking this Working Committee to put his private commercial interests ahead of the interests of the Taupō District community, of residents and ratepayers. This option is therefore not a compromised option at all. It is a commercial option. As I read the report recording the campground owner's latest comments, and the comments he's made to you today, he's now asking for a new 33-year lease term with the option of camping on the lakefront ceasing at some point beyond 2038. If a future council makes a future decision, who knows when. That too is a commercial option, with absolutely no commitment from this council to do anything at all except kick the can down the road if it is accepted. The reality is that the campground owner's proposals and preferences continue to change, and the driving motivation is his personal financial gain. It is not for this committee to use its regulatory function to support the private commercial interests of one man over and above the purpose of the reserve and community access, including hapu access. The option put to you by the hapu respects his legal entitlements under the lease. It respects the reliance that the campers have placed on certainty of their sublease term, and it clearly directs that there is to be no lakeshore camping on the expiry of the lease in 2038. It is a community option. The option, there are good reasons to provide this clear signal to the community and to seek their views. Lakeshore camping prevents and undermines public access, thereby privatising and commercialising a public space for the exclusive benefit of a fee-paying minority, thereby preventing shared enjoyment of one of the few sheltered north-facing bays on the eastern shore of Lake Taupo by the public, hapu members and campers alike. Lakeshore camping prevents the hapu from having a relationship with the lakeshore. It is adversely impacting the natural character and amenity of the lakeshore. It prevents proper use and enjoyment of the boat ramp at Motutere Bay, a public and community asset, and it has also hindered the council's ability to provide adequate boat trailer parking facilities for the boat ramp, causing safety and access issues. In choosing the option put forward by the hapu, the Working Committee chooses to clearly signal the matter in the draft RMP for community discussion and debate from all interested persons, because all interested persons will clearly be put on notice that the issue affects them, the community, the hapu, the campground owner, and campers. In contrast, inclusion of the commercial options in the draft RMP without clarity that they are premised on reaching agreement in future lease negotiations when at any time the campground owner could pull out of those negotiations and let his full lease term run, and he would be entitled to do so, that has the potential to mislead the community. For example, the community could wrongly support the option to reconfigure the lakeshore area to enable separate day use and camping zones through the submission process, thinking it is the pathway to lakeshore community access at an earlier date, but not understand that, at best, it comes with a condition of lakeshore camping for a further 19 years. At worst, the draft RMP could represent a false promise to the community if the option never materialises because the campground owner chooses to let his existing lease run to 2038. This hapu is not supportive of outcomes that result in individual gain or false promises. We are supportive of fair and certain outcomes for the community, the hapu, the campgrounds and campers. The decision we are advocating for today is open to the Working Committee to make on the basis of the further information that has been provided to you. It is the role of a diligent committee to assess further information and take decisions on the basis of the full record of material before you. Finally, if the Working Committee has concerns that a change now would give rise to reputational risk or accusation of bias in any decision, then you must recognise that those same concerns arise from maintaining the commercial options in spite of the information you have heard from the hapu and from DOC. You have a choice today to release the draft RMP for consultation as is or with amendments. In fact, my view is that the choice can be characterised as to release the draft RMP for consultation with an uncertain commercial option that lacks transparency, or release it with a clear, certain community option that allows for discussion and debate from all interested persons. The hapu say the decision is clear. Put this issue squarely before the community and allow them to tell you what they think. Tēnā tātou.
But thank you, Maya. lot to take on board from both speakers. We're going to do a resolution now that the Motutere Recreation Reserve Management Plan Committee receives those comments from members of the public. We're just going to bring that up. Just need a mover and a seconder for that. I moved Jade Wakaida, seconded Mari Poto. All those votes say aye, against carried. Bye. We're now going to ask Nick Carroll, Policy Manager, to speak to the committee. I'm sure we're going to be taking most of the report as being read, but we've got obviously some options here to spend a bit of time deliberating on, I think. So if you could lead us off, Nick, that'd be great.
You're right. Well, 100% of the report is being read, but there were a few things I just wanted to bring to your attention, which I think might help the debate. But first of all, before I get into those, I wanted to make an acknowledgement to the project who have actually done the hard work to actually get to this point. Both representatives from within council, but also from the hapu as well in this co-design process. So while I'm sitting in front of you, they're the ones who have actually done the hard work. So I wanted to acknowledge that up front. Second point is that what you have in front of you is a draft reserve management plan that reflects the direction that you gave us as a committee through a series of workshops, and then on the 25th of July through the resolutions that you passed. So we as officers and the project team have been very focused on delivering what it is that you have asked us to produce for you. One thing popped out when we were going through the drafting process that was less clear, and it's to do with proposed Area 1. So you remember we talked about expansion areas. You'll see in the draft, we've talked about them as proposed camping areas. And that's to reflect that they're not necessarily an expansion of the camp. They could be a change in the location of camping. In particular, for proposed Area 1, which sits at the top of the hill at the back of the camp, we've got a series of conditions sitting in there. And the first of those is on page 45 of the agenda. Talks about that area, proposed Area 1, becoming available once the day use area on the lakefront has become available. So it's we take some camping off the lakefront and we then enable some camping in the proposed Area 1. Now that wasn't explicit in the resolutions that you passed. That was our understanding of where you wish to land, but that's something that you might wish to debate, is whether there is an inherent link between the removal of camping off the lakefront and the enablement of camping at the back, or whether they're two completely separate issues. Second point I wanted to make in relation to that area is around another condition which talks about a cultural assessment. So you will have seen as you work through the drafting process, the report that you have talking about the cultural significance of not only the reserve, but around the reserve. Our understanding is that there are no specific sites of waihi tapu in that exact area. However, we understand that in going through the process of developing that proposed camping area, there is the potential that that things are discovered that we have not anticipated. So at the moment, you'll see there's a condition which talks about further cultural assessment before we open up that area for development. We're always really conscious when we're developing plans, and reserve management plans are no exception, about trying to provide as much certainty for the users as possible. So one of the things that Maya and the project team have talked about is trying to narrow down the focus of any such cultural assessment going forward, so that we're very clear about exactly what that assessment would look at. And that's further work that we will do over probably the next 6 weeks, and you'll be able to consider that as part of the deliberations process. But our view is that that you don't have to hold off your consultation on the substantive management plan. You're able to proceed with that while this small matter can be further refined as you progress. There's been lots of talk about the timing of change, and at the moment the management plan talks about transitioning from the current state, which has camping along all of the foreshore, to a future state where there's camping on part of the foreshore and there's day use on the other part. So a shared use arrangement. To be very clear, and Maya touched on this, there's a current lease arrangement in place. That lease arrangement doesn't change until 2038, so 14 years from now, unless the parties to that lease agree to those changes. So that's council and Mr. Tilton at this point in time. So we've worked on the assumption that there won't necessarily be this day use area created until 2038. However, there is the possibility, and the management plan leaves it open, the possibility for that to occur earlier if the two parties can come to a negotiated agreement to achieve that. The other thing that's quite relevant in terms of the creation of that day use area is money. We've talked about the opportunity to create car parking for day users. We've talked about car parking for boat trailers, further planting and access areas, furniture, barbecues and the like, to make it a really pleasant place for people to spend their time. That all takes money, which is not currently sitting in council's budget for the next 3 years. We'll be reviewing that in 2027 as part of our next long-term plan. But in thinking about the pace of change, my suggestion is that you think about that change to a day use area being tied or at least connected in some way with the availability of funding to enable its development. But to put it bluntly, it would be a reputational risk, I would suggest, for council if we were to remove camping, turn it into a day area, and then not spend any money providing the facilities that are required to make it a usable and pleasant environment for the community. So I think there's definitely a connection there. You'll see in the report that we've noted some further information that's been provided, and Maya and John have touched on the information that they've brought to the table. We also had correspondence from the Department of Conservation, which is recorded in that report. You've got the ability to consider all of that information within the context of the hearings process and the deliberations process. So even if you choose not to act on that today, you've got the ability to continue to consider that through that process. I guess I would also point out that in the last couple of days, we've had further emails which have come in from members of the community expressing their views. And I expect that this will be a pattern that will continue going forward. So our job as officers is to make sure all of that is brought together and all of that is put on the table for you to consider at once. Essentially what we're looking for today as an officer team is endorsement of the management plan so that we can take that out. And as was noted, the third option is sitting there in terms of amendments. We are most welcome to discuss any potential amendments you might have throughout the entirety of the management plan. But ideally, we'd like to nail those today. My experience would suggest that that can be very hard to do if everybody wants to wordsmith in a committee situation. Also recognise that there are threads which go through the management plan. So a change in one place can result in consequences in other places. My suggestion to you is if you wish to make amendments, that you are very clear about the outcome that you want, And then you enable us through resolution to go away and to make those consequential changes. So that's my suggestion to you, if you wish to go down that path. A couple of last points. While you are considering a draft management plan at this point, and that is meant to reflect your views at this point in the process, it's important to be very clear that you go into the hearings process and the deliberations process with an open mind. You will receive a lot more information from a whole range of submitters, and it's very important that that is all considered with an open mind when looking at the final draft management plan. And then lastly, a couple of details, I guess, in terms of the engagement process. The team's proposing to go out on the 3rd of September, and we're out for 2 months. So we'd then be shutting on the 4th of November, 3rd of September to the 4th of November. That potentially enables you to hold a hearing this side of Christmas, which we think would be beneficial. And I know that Heidi wants to have a quick chat about hearing dates in particular. And then I also wanted to note that there are two sessions that are being planned, 2 open days that we intend to hold with the community on the 5th and the 26th of October. So that's really an opportunity for people to come along, ask questions about the draft and talk to officers about what's sitting in the draft and maybe what's not sitting in the draft. But it's also a great opportunity for you as committee members who are going to own this draft, who are going to own the ultimate reserve management plan, to also engage with the community. So we'll make sure that you've got all the necessary information so that you're empowered to come along and be part of those open day exercises as well. Do you want to touch on the date now?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so just double checking, Karen has sent out an email just requesting if the availability from yourselves on the 27th of November is okay for a hearing, as well as the 28th, which is a shorter session, but that's deliberations if we can get all the hearings done on the 27th. Does anyone have any conflicts?
I think that can't be managed.
Thanks, Heidi. That's all that I wanted to say at this point. We're obviously here, both myself and the rest of the team, to answer any questions that you might have as you progress through the meeting. Over to you.
Heidi? Yeah, I guess for me, I'm Mr. Half Glass Full, and I think we've made some really good progress up to today. We've got a good, just short of an hour in terms of, for want of a better word, deliberations in terms of this draft. And so just want to get your appetite. Was there any sort of questions you had for Nick first? And then maybe we'll move on to the next stage. Kia ora. Sandra.
Thank you, Danny. It's probably a bit of a silly question, but because you have the report on the sensitive information and the locations of the Waihi Tapu, I presume that's been taken into account when you are putting together these maps for us.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're not going to be overlaying something and then later on find that actually that's not an area that we should have actually been. Thank you.
Any other questions for Nick? Jade, you have anything?
And maybe just a comment. So on pace of change and point that there wasn't any reasonable funding tagged in the current LTP for the next 3 years. We haven't fully identified when that 3-year period is, right? And so my point there is, so there is potential planning opportunity in the funding discussion. So that's my first point. I'll let you. Yeah.
Yep. So the next time that we'll review the long-term plan will be in 2027. So we'll adopt it in June 2027. The substantive work basically happens in the 12-month period before that. So sort of middle of 26, 7, we're developing work plans, assessing budgets, and prioritising, I guess. So that I think is probably the next logical time when we would sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do in terms of infrastructure? What does that look like from an investment perspective? And how does that investment line up with other priorities? Bearing in mind that councils are doing similar things at Kinloch and Mangakino as well.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. I was just thinking that given there's a bit of time, there's some planning and prioritising options. And so on budget and investment, I think we have some time to prepare and plan for that. So I think that's a potential week, I guess, explanation for us to consider in terms of the risk in this time. And I guess I just want to make a comment as well, because we've talked about providing for, environmental management. What we can't do is look at the investment to be made and the gains we're going to make in terms of looking after the environment, which is one of the pillars of this whole review. So I'll just that's a comment.
Are there any more questions for Nick? No? Okay, so I'm going to take it that everybody's happy with the substantive draft of the management plan, and we're just looking at potentially options 1 and 2. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think it's 2 and 3, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, 2 and 3. 2 and 3.
And if we are to look at option 3, we need to be specific of what those changes are that are being identified.
2 or 3.
Sorry, 2 or 3. Oh gosh. Yeah, and so I'm comfortable that either one is, for want of a better word, lawful. So I think it's more around having a discussion now about the amendment. Warwick's just pointed out that if we do make an amendment, we need to be quite specific about it and what we're trying to achieve. But I think some of the conversations earlier are quite useful in that regard. My view is that if we go, say for example, option 2, that doesn't stop people making submissions on that in terms of any, want a better word, amendments, and maybe another way of putting that information forward for consideration. We move towards the final. So just throw that out there as part of the discussion. Dave, you've got a comment?
I really think we should push for option 3. I think that the current draft reflects the decisions we made at the last meeting, but picking up on what we've heard today and also in the report, at page 13 around information received since then. I think some of the comments that come in really do warrant a discussion and some amendment. I take your point, Nick, around drafting by committee, and that perhaps coming back to you separately with comments noting that there will be some consequential changes. Perhaps what works here, needs to be disaligned, could be an option. What to pick up on the comments of the Department of Conservation and looking to a longer term future around removing built infrastructure along the lakefront. They're clear views for that direction, which I think is not news to us. So given that the current RMPs in 2004 we really have an opportunity here to, create something that is legacy worthy. I suggest we do it well, and so on the opportunity to make amendments to that. So my suggestion is to go for option. I wanted to start though, if I may, by supporting the comments to the team. Thank you for your hard work and for getting us in this draft to this position. That has been a challenge and a lot of work, and I want to commend you. And so, the committee, and I'll
Go to your worship.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank everyone that's been involved in this process. I think it's an excellent report. It's been prepared for us today, and take the public forum submitters seriously. But I think option 2 gives us a draft that's been formulated through various expertise, over 6 or 7 of them, quite considerably, and we have some late information coming today from Mr. Tilton and Maya, which is fantastic, but I think it could be treated as part of the submission process. I don't like wordsmithing stuff by committee, as Nick has pointed out, but that would be my external view coming in to this committee, fairly fresh. I think it's an excellent report, done a wonderful job, team, and we've had a lot of people involved through the process up till now. So I would be supporting option 2, to be honest, but happy with the submissions, and Mr. Tilton's offered to exit the lakefront earlier than what was anticipated, or possibly what was earlier, which is wonderful. And just pointing out the long-term plan processes, we have annual plans as well, and quite often we'll put stuff into the annual plan. It doesn't have to wait 3 years to get any expenditure approved. It can be done annually. We don't like doing it, but I think the point was made. If you clear the site, you don't want to leave it like it. We want to work down this. Work and make that beneficial for the people. So I think some wonderful opportunities here as well. So thank you for the public forum today, but I think we treat this through the process. But that's just my view.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I wanted to put out a plan that is clear, that is certain, so that the community is able to provide submissions on information that is as black and white as we can make it. I think that's where I'm suggesting that we be sure about that, and where if amendments are to be made, that we make them. That opportunity. So I'll reiterate the desire that I feel. Cool.
I too wish to thank our team for all the mahi you've been doing. It's been a pleasure, and I know we've got a long way to go still. The proposal before us, the draft RNP, is about the recreation reserve and providing greater, safer access for the community. So we've heard and continue to hear the call for a greater, safer access to Motutere from the community, the public and the hapu. Now, the decision that was made in July was made on the information received at that time, supporting the wider community. Since I now believe we have additional information coming through from the hapu and DOC. And that is for the community to support the proposal to provide a greater, safer access for the Turangi Taupo residents, ratepayers and the hapu. I now take a view that I will support option 3. The compromise is this impacts the community, including, again, I reiterate, the Turangi Taupō resident ratepayers and hapu. We're advocating for everyone. This is one of the only view bays on the eastern side of Taupō, or Lake Taupō, that is swimmable and has easy accessibility for the community, our ratepayers, and our hapu. So, Mr. Chair, I'm very clear. It is option 3 for me. Golda.
Nick?
I just want to clarify. I just wanted to clarify one thing. So option 3 is simply to make some amendments to the management plan. It doesn't specify what those amendments are. It could be a change this word or add this date or who knows what. Option 3 could be a whole range of different things. So I think perhaps when you're talking about what you prefer to see, it would be beneficial to talk about what are the actual amendments that you would like to see made to the plan. And I'm guessing, reading between the lines, that we're talking about changes which would set a clear end date for camping on all of the foreshore, the end date being 2038.
Sure.
Could I just indulge? Our job is to give you advice. Fortunately, we don't have to make any decisions, which is great. But part of the advice that we're meant to give you is around risks. And I think thinking from a council perspective, there are probably 3 risks that I would want you to at least think about as you're thinking through this debate. The first one's around sort of reputational risk for councils. So I know following the 25 July meeting, when you passed some resolutions, there was quite a lot of media coverage. And the media portrayed that decision as one that council had made and was going forward with to consult the community with. So if you decide to change that, and to be very clear, the committee is well within your rights to change your position through the draft. If you do decide to change that, then you could reasonably expect there'll be some more media coverage, and there is a risk that that council's decision making is seen as inconsistent or unreliable. The second risk that I wanted to talk about is in relation to the information from hapu, from Doc, and from Mr. Tilton that is noted in the report. And there is a risk that that the community perceive, or some people in the community perceive, that council's being captured by those 3 parties, that they are getting an undue influence on the process because they were noted in the report and put in front of you. Whereas, as I say, we're continually getting feedback in from other people, which is not put in front of you at this stage, because we've signalled that that will come through in the hearings process. So that's a perception risk for you to at least bear in mind. And then the third risk that I just wanted to re-emphasise is that if the management plan sets a clear end date of 2038 for camping on the lakefront, there is a risk that the current leaseholder decides not to make any changes until 2038. So we essentially have status quo for the next 14 years. So that is a potential risk. I think those are probably the key risks that I wanted you to at least be aware of as you go through your debate. Thank you.
Andrew, you are next.
Yeah. Nick has actually covered some of the aspects that I was going to cover. I'm the councillor for that area. I was elected by the people, not all of you, because some of you on the Maori. But I know that area very well. I know the people, and I know the feelings about this. Council is in a very difficult situation, and I'm talking about council staff here, because they've got the lease process going alongside, which it's nothing to do with us. That's a commercial situation they have to deal with. But we don't want to compromise anything that may actually be doing or working on. I see option 3 as being an ability to make amendments that were glaringly obvious that we should have made and we didn't. So we previously had discussions and we came to the conclusions that we did, and we directed staff to go away and draw up this draft plan, which they've done. And I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're going to have a 2 months consultation process. We're going to have hearings, and I do know that there has been other stuff that's come in that we haven't had put before us. And I think, I hate using this word because it's so overused, but in the interest of democracy, I personally would like to think that this is absolutely a transparent process, and that all of those people who want to come and talk to us and that we will be listening to have that opportunity, and then we go through. And I also don't want to think that we're going to do something and then have to redo it again. I think that we are going to do it once, we're going to do it well, and we're going to do it in the way that it ought to be done, keeping in mind the whole feeling that is going with this, because there is feeling with it. And I certainly don't want it to be trialled by the media, which it actually could very easily turn into that. It's got to be a very, very solid, sensible process that we all agree with, actually. I want it to, it's got to be consensus. And when we come to the end of, when we close on the 4th of November 24, we've heard everybody, and then we do it, and we do it once. Thank you. So for option 2, for that reason, yes.
Murray, do you want to make some comment, or are you happy with what's been covered by your other friends? Or Jade, your lights on. Did you want to?
So just to go back to Nick, kia ora. You've asked us for some clarity anyway that will require some amendments, right? On proposed expansion area 1. Is that correct?
So the draft that you have in front of you has that link, I guess, saying that you can't open up area 1 for camping until we create the day use area on the front, and that was our understanding of where you landed. Now we've interpreted, and I guess I just wanted to draw your attention to that and be very transparent and make sure that you are comfortable that we've linked those two ideas, that you take away one place and you give somewhere else.
Just one more thing. I think that at the very least, the RNP needs to signal a decision point for the expiry of the lakeshore campaign. So that would be an amendment.
Oh, to be very clear, if as a committee you get to a point where you want to signal an ultimate end to camping, then yes, that is definitely an amendment, which would flow through into a couple of different parts of the management
plan. It still doesn't give me clarity in terms of an end date and how that it's going to be achieved. It certainly does not give me comfort that if we choose option 2, that is going to be achieved in that option. So
I 100% agree, because at the moment the management plan is drafted in a way that camping would continue on the eastern side of the boat ramp in perpetuity until there's some other future decision that council might make through a management plan. But I think the reality would be, if this was a management plan that was adopted, then we would expect a new lease would be signed for a 33-year period that would enable camping on the eastern side of the boat
it still confuses me that. It just still confuses me. Because how can you write your plan when there is no end date? That's concerning for me, Mr. Chair. And there's no clarity. How can our hard worker continue writing this plan without an end date? There is no end date.
Correct. And on the basis of the decision that you made on the 25th, we've interpreted that as you don't expect there to be an end to camping on the foreshore to the east of the boat ramp.
But on the west there isn't.
Yes, but that was made without the information we have today, the additional information. Therefore, my stance is, with the extra information given to date, that decision for myself as a member wasn't the right decision because we did not have all the information in front of us. So, Mr. Chair, I really am perturbed that, again, we're making it hard for the writers to write their plan when we don't have a clear indication of an end date.
I think but I'm comfortable in terms of the decision we made, and I was pleased that we had a consensus approach. The whole purpose of the submission process is to have a document that goes out for people to consult on. So the only question here is, do we have enough information right now to actually set a date? Is 2038 the right date, or is it another date or anything else? I think where we're going to ultimately land is we're going to have some sort of date. I think that's clear from this committee. The only question is do we go with option 2, where we use the submission process, and we'll be taking the letters that we've received recently as part of that, and that'll give ourselves as the committee and whatever, when we go through the deliberations process, to thoroughly think through what is the right approach. So I don't think we're that far apart. Option 2 doesn't lock us into anything either, and I think it will give a whole lot of, if a small bit of information, don't take that out of context, we've already made some quite significant changes now, what a decision might be. You can imagine going through that full process would also provide information. So I get that there's strong feelings in terms of, no, we should lock a date now. But in terms of my gut feel, for want of a better word, is the robustness of this process in terms of where we landed in July. I think there's still confidence at this table that we're going to take on board all the information and make a decision. And you can see around the table, it's not just the hapu that feel that we need to come to a hard date. And of myself, I think that is something that we will need to do as part of the plan. So the question is, do we lock that in now and potentially steer the consultation process in a particular direction, or do we stick with option 2, go with what we have, allow the hapu, DOC, the trust board, and everybody else, including the camp users, to make some strong submissions, give us the information, and ultimately still, my gut feel is we will need to have our date at the end of this process. I don't think we can't not do that, given the discussions today. So that's just my view. And again, my preference is consensus. And again, we've come quite a way in a short period of time, and
question. Nick, can you talk us through, the hearing process? How does it happen? Where does it take place? No, not yet. Like, because in my mind, what I'm thinking with two is that we get this information that we've already got, but you know, we get all that information. And then we've got all that information, and at that point, we then set in place dates exactly and whatever. But I'd like to know what the hearing process looks like.
Councillor, so I believe the hearing process would be the full day. It'll be most likely in the chambers due to the technology that we have here. And we would have about hopefully 5 to 6 people. And then depending how many people wish to speak, will depend on how long the hearing goes for, and then it'll be deliberations the same as any other hearing. That's correct. Yeah.
And at that point, we can then make amendments such as timing and other things that we've decided that we need to include. That's sort of, that's where I'm going, and I'm not on the page that you're on. I'm not. I'm on the same page, but I'm in a different chapter. Yes, you are.
It sounds like there's comfort with option 2 to run with what we have, and not only through submissions but also the hearings process where, for one of better word, is it evidence or just presentation? So what's the legal terminology?
Submissions.
Sorry, I didn't mean my mic. And what is that? Submissions. So it'll still be submissions in terms of just presented. And I think the robustness of that process, we will, you know, the outcome will be we will need to set a date, and I think there's an opportunity for further discussion around that. So yeah.
I support you on that stance. Chair, 2 excellent public forums submitters here today, and you know, it's submission time of some excellent ideas. So you know, I look forward to that. You know, welcoming be sent them in person when they do submit during the process. So you're moving there.
Okay, so goodbye. So I've moved and Mayor David has seconded. I'm going to put the motion in terms of option 2. Do we need to put it on the screen or? Is that option 2? Yeah, okay. So the recommendation is that the Motutere Recreation Reserve Management Plan Committee directs officers to make the draft management plan and the Motutere context summary available to the public and call for written objections or suggestions on the draft plan in accordance with section 41 of the Reserve Act 1977. Move myself, seconded Mayor David. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. I'm not sure what's the today. We've set a date for the hearings, which is, so everybody's happy with that date?
28.
Yeah.
I think that.
And it'll be the similar timing and 4:30 in the afternoon?
Oh,
Or will it be all day or?
All day, man. You get
So I believe we booked it in from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Yep.
just to take into account people who are working.
So you're comfortable that in terms of the people who want to be heard, that'll be enough time? Uncertain.
There is 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
27, 28 November.
So Wednesday, the 27th of November, and Thursday, the 28th.
I believe Thursday's the latest start. It is a shorter.
That's right. So
Eddie, have you prepared in case it needs to go longer?
We can accommodate for that for sure.
Mr Chair, is there any break in that time?
Oh no, we work so hard.
Kai.
No sandwiches on the table.
Just explain the process, please, for the day.
Yeah, so essentially we'll open the hearings and we'll invite people to present, and I expect you'll have a range of people who will be here in person, but we'll probably have quite a few online, I expect as well. The idea through a hearing process is that you as decision makers are there to receive information. So you definitely want to open the ears and listen to what people have to say. You are able to ask questions of clarification. If somebody asks you or provides some information, you go, I don't quite understand this. Can you explain where it is or what you mean? But the idea is that you're not expressing your own views through the hearing process. The idea is that as you absorb all this information, all these different viewpoints, that you're not predetermining the outcome that you're looking for. And we really noticed that it can be quite a draining day, listening to a lot of people come and go, because you've got to concentrate very hard. So we try and build in regular breaks and provide food just to keep the energy levels up. What we will know as we progress through the submission period is how many people are likely to want to talk. So we ask them to make submissions. So we'll have an idea towards the end of that submission period. Are we talking 5 or 10, or is it 500? So that will enable us to make some decisions about slimming down the period or potentially looking for additional time if we need it.
In the period of time they're allowed, I think you said, what was it?
Normally, if I go back to long-term plan hearings that we've just been through, we gave people 5 minutes. And normally there's then some time for you to ask some questions. The principle is that they have put their thoughts down in writing, and that's the submission that you have. And their ability to come along and talk to you is an opportunity to, I guess, accentuate particular points. You know, sometimes it can be hard to pick up in a written submission the deep feeling on a particular issue, or for them to explain further what it is that they've put in writing. But the idea is that they're not there to come up with something completely brand new or to read out to you their 14-page submission on why we've done a great job.
And I like asking questions.
We've got 2 days, so 2 days.
So that's 2 days of hearings and deliberations?
So much will depend on how many submitters we've got, right? Ideally, we'd like to wrap it all up in 2 days. If we've got a lot of people who want to speak to you, then we might have to find additional time.
We've obviously had a conversation today about amendments with dates and things. How do you, is there an opportunity to provide options in terms of those deliberations? So I think that's going to be quite key in terms of getting a robust outcome.
Absolutely. And I expect through submissions, we will get ideas about how fast transition should take. There'll be some people who want to see fast transition. There'll be some people who are worried about their particular or access to a particular piece of the reserve being more important than another piece. We'll be able to bring all of that information to you, and then you'll be able to look at it in the round and then make some decisions with everything on the table, which I guess is the advantage of that hearing process. But certainly we as officers, we will come to you with drafting suggestions about achieving different outcomes. So if one of those outcomes is cessation and end to camping, then we'll talk about, well, you could do it in this sort of time frame. These would be the benefits and the costs, or you could do it in this sort of time frame. And again, the benefits and the costs. But like you, it helps us to understand what the views and the ideas are of the community and those other stakeholders out there, because it helps us with our drafting process too.
Is there any final comments for Nick? Otherwise, I think we're going to finish up for today.
Kia ora. Just for clarification, what's the timelines for the submissions? Then moving on to
So the submission period will open on Tuesday, the 3rd of September, and it will close on the 4th of November. So it's basically 2 calendar months that people have. And we've got the open days on the 5th and the 26th of October. So at the campground, and I think we're also having a bit of a chat about opportunities at the marae as well, some shape or form yet to be determined. And then 27th, 28th will be the hearings. The reason we have a bit of a lag in there is it takes us some time to sort of process all the submissions, to read them, and to condense them down into key ideas. We're really conscious that not only will you read all of the submissions from start to finish, which is a big job, but you've then got to move into the next phase, which is how do we make decisions and what are the key issues that we're trying to get our heads around as decision makers. So our job is to try and take all of that information and distill it down into those key ideas, those key themes or issues, so that you can really focus your decision-making brains on those. And that takes us a few weeks, to be honest. So that's why we have that gap between the close and then the hearings.
Okay, if there's no more questions for Nick, you did such a wonderful job of opening us up, Jay. So if you want to close us up and that'll be us. Then I might be on Māori TV. We'll see how we go. One of the ankles. One more.
Kia ora.